You are listening to The Underground Subway with host David Alston, a podcast dedicated to giving you the strategies to live a free and better life. Here is David Alston.
Hi, I'm David Alston, host of The Underground Subway, and welcome to another edition of a podcast that is dedicated to one thing, dedicated to giving you the tools and strategies needed to live a better and more successful life, a life that is full of liberty, a life that is full of freedom. What is liberty? What is freedom? It is the ability to move, to think, to function, to act, to react without restraints, without the chains holding you back. Harriet Tubman said this. She said, "I could have freed a lot more slaves if only they knew that they were slaves." My friends, how many of us are living a life in which we have chains holding us back and we're not aware of it? Well, that's what this podcast is dedicated to doing, giving you the tools and strategies needed to reveal and then give you an opportunity to release those chains. How do we do that? By giving and bringing to you quality and qualified guests that will explain and reveal their expertise and their experiences in life to help us live a better life. I'm excited about the fact that you have joined me for this podcast, and I'm also excited about our guest for this edition of the Underground Subway. Let me introduce my guest to you. His name is Timothy Stuetz. Timothy Stuetz, and let me explain a little bit about Timothy. Timothy now has been blessed to write more children's stories than anyone alive. 86 to date. That's right, 86 children's stories to date. And guess what? With many more coming. All of his entertaining and educational family stories and courses are created with God's grace, his wisdom, creativity, radiant love, and knowledge of ancient arts and sacred sciences. Timothy's stories and courses switch on the love, bliss, and brilliance genes in all generations. Over the past 40 years, Timothy has helped tens of thousands leap over some of life's most difficult challenges with grace and ease to experience the wonders of vital health, the freedom of financial wealth, the bliss of a quiet, focused mind, the joys of loving relationships, the infinite powers of their soul, and seeing their dreams come true. I'm excited, extremely excited to welcome to the Underground Subway, Timothy Stuetz. Timothy, thank you so much, my friend, for joining the Underground Subway.
Oh, David, I'm so delighted to hop on this subway with you and to fulfill those intentions that you set forth in the beginning describing this podcast, which are absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much, my friend. Well, let's get into it, because if we're going to talk about one of the things that, if we're going to talk about living a better life, if we're going to talk about living a life uh, that is void of chains and restraints and the things holding us back, that's a great thing, Timothy. But then on the other side of the coin, maybe we need to start instilling freedom and liberty into the minds of our children, into the minds of the next generation. Which brings me to the first part of your bio, which said that you've written to date 86 children's books. How did you start writing children's stories? And tell us something about some of the stories that you wrote.
Well, I started out of college as a certified public accountant. And then following my heart one morning, I woke up and said to my partner, first thing out of my mouth, if Hershey's can make chocolate kisses, I can make chocolate French kisses. And that that ended up with me opening up a chocolate shop and making chocolate French kisses. And it was in that chocolate shop one day that I got a big box delivered to me by UPS that I did not order, and they would not take it back because it had my address on it. And I opened up that box, and looking at me was 50 little teddy bear faces. So I did some research being a CPA and loving Hardy Boy books when I was a kid, and found out who owned those, where those bears should have been shipped.
Mm-hmm.
And they ended up giving me the whole box of bears, and I carried one of those bears with me in my car riding shotgun. And after about 2 weeks, I picked it up one day and looked at it and said, "Who are you?" And I heard, "I'm Poet Bear." And that made sense to me because I wrote love poetry, I wrote philosophical poetry, things that just came to me. And so I combined that little bear and my stories into a book and put them in a little box in a package. And I was the first one to think of marketing and packaging stuffed animals with a book for children, but I was way ahead of my time. And when I got the whole thing together, my mom took one look at it and said, "You blew it. That should have been a book for children." And I said, "Yeah, Mom, well, there's not one thing in there for children or even about children." So, but my mom really knew me, and she had planted a seed. And somehow 6 months later, I found the idea for the first children's story popping into my head. And then they just never stopped. I never intended to write one children's story. I definitely didn't ever intend on writing 86, but following my heart and opening that chocolate shop, which failed, so that I could get those teddy bears and get the idea to write the children's stories. That was the purpose of that. So yes, I've been very blessed, and yeah, I just never know where stories are going to come from. And I'm focusing more on marketing and getting my stories out into the world right now rather than writing. I have a backlog of stories I want to write, and I've really been feeling like I wanted to write in the last couple of days. So I started looking through the ones I had in process to see which one was going to be next. And then I get a messenger notice today from my very first yoga teacher, and she's in her 80s. And she starts off writing this little story, and then she says, "Okay, your turn. Want to play?" So I wrote back. I put in some more of her story that she started, and we're going to go back and forth and write a story, and it's a lot of fun.
Wow, wow. That's amazing. So you got that connection with the children's stories, and then you get a message from how old you said she was, your yoga teacher?
Oh, she's in her 80s.
In her 80s. Wow, 80-year-old yoga teacher. So that's interesting because I'm actually going to start my first yoga session in a week. And
All right.
that kind of let's use this as a something to sort of transfer our conversation over, or as they say in the radio profession, segue.
Segue.
Segue. If we're talking about your yoga teacher and yoga in general, part of your bio says that your experience, part of your life experiences has been dealing with the wonders of vital health. What does it mean when we say vital health?
To be free in our bodies, to be free in our minds, to be free of emotional baggage. For me, connected with our spirituality, connected with our essence. For me, vital health is all of those wrapped into one. And yoga was actually my introduction to all of that.
Okay. That's amazing. Because talk to us about yoga, well, not necessarily about yoga, but your vital health. How important is it to reduce the stress level that we have in our lives? And what are some ways that we can start to do that?
Boy, when I first took yoga, I didn't realize how stressed I was. I thought my body I was in my early 30s, and I thought I was in really pretty good shape, and did not realize how much tension I was carrying in my body, and actually hurt my back really bad about 5 weeks into the class, and went to the chiropractor for a first time, and he told me I had the neck of an 80-year-old man, but that it could be corrected.
Of course.
And it has, and I loved yoga so much, I ended up teaching it. And then I discovered Tai Chi and Qigong and started teaching Tai Chi and Qigong, and found a meditation path and started teaching meditation. So through practicing and teaching all of those things, um, I'm I just turned 70. How old am I? I just turned 71. I have always been medication free my entire life. I have absolutely no pain. So I I was doing yoga, and I started teaching yoga, and I started teaching Tai Chi and meditation, and all of those things literally started shifting all aspects of my being, mentally, emotionally, physically. I'm 71 years old. I have never taken any medications. I'm very strong and healthy. I feel better than when I felt in my 20s. I have no pain in my body. I have no stiffness. And I do a daily meditation practice of about an hour, about 30 to 45 minutes of various Qigong and yoga practices.
Okay.
And through all of that, I've learned to control my mind. So I control my mind the way that I can control my body. So if I want my mind to think, it will think. If I don't want it to think, it's a peaceful lake, totally still. And I attribute that to being so still that I can hear the ideas for stories come in. Um, I feel like I'm in more harmony with God's divine flow, with the universal flow. So that's applicable to anybody. If our mind is quiet, then we're open to hearing and sensing and intuiting what we need to do to move forward in life effectively and successfully and achieve the dreams God has for us.
Wow. Now you said a couple of things you said that I want to touch base with, and we're just having a conversation for those. We're talking with Timothy Stuetz. Um, Timothy, you mentioned you're 71 years old, and you said that you started yoga in your 30s. Okay, that's wonderful. You were in your 30s and you started yoga, which I'm not sure. Again, I've never taken a yoga class yet, but I would assume that it has a lot to do with stretching and focusing, etc. If you start in your 30s, that's wonderful. What about a person? Can a person start yoga in their 40s or their 50s or their 60s or at 70?
Yes, they can. And at that point, I would really recommend that somebody that, for most people, because by that time, um, I'm looking at the word podcast on the screen, and I'm thinking our bodies are pretty much past by that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
and and yoga can be a little, I don't want to use the word intense, but I think something with more fluid movements, like an easy form of Tai Chi or Qigong, is easier for Westerners to do because there's more movement involved, and it frees the body up and loosens the body up a lot quicker than yoga does. So trying
Mm-hmm.
to stretch something in yoga at that age, you might stretch something out and not be able to do a yoga class for 5 or 6 weeks. But
Okay.
gentle Qigong movements and Tai Chi movements flow the energy, in my experience, much stronger than any yoga practice does.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so someone like me that's going to go into a class for the first time shouldn't expect to go in and be able to stretch body parts that have been rusty for for years.
No, no, we take it to it's not about pain for gain. It's about in going to the point where we can go to comfortably
Mm-hmm.
and focus the mind at the same time and breathe into the positions, and gradually we can extend those positions as we feel comfortable. But really, it's not about trying to do things. And I have pushed. I read about this one yoga position that said if you can hold this position, you will achieve everything that you could possibly achieve in yoga. So I tried to put my body in that position, and I couldn't do yoga for 6 months afterwards.
How important is it? You mentioned the word breathing. How important is our breathing? And do you really think most people really breathe properly? And I know that sounds crazy
I
to say breathe properly, but
No, it doesn't sound crazy. I know. I know most people do not breathe properly. And we are meant to, our abdomens and even into our back is meant to expand as we're inhaling and contract as we're exhaling. And most people only get breath into the chest area. And most people actually breathe backwards. And all of that usually started when we were infants or children, out of something fearful or out of having a stuffed up nose, and we're meant to breathe through our nose. And something happened and we had to gasp for air. And when that happens a few times, it really reverses our breathing pattern. So a real simple tip for everyone that is very easy is just sit in a chair and bend over as far as you can comfortably. Just let your arms hang, blow all the air out through your mouth, and then just allow the inhale to come in naturally through your nose, and you will feel it going down into your abdomen and maybe even expanding around into your lower back. And just spend several minutes breathing like that. And if you do that 3 or 4 times a day for just a couple of minutes, you will start to reestablish an easy abdominal breathing pattern, which will bring more oxygen into your body. And with more oxygen in your body, your cells are much happier and your mind is much clearer.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to ask you what are the benefits, the health benefits of proper breathing?
It's a clear mind, it's healthy cells, and it's just feeling enlivened. I mean, our breath
Mhm.
is enlivening. We can live a long time without food, a little less time without water, but without air, we do not live very long. And getting that proper flow of oxygen in is absolutely wonderful. I do several sets of breathing practices every morning.
So, Timothy, you, we breathe. You just given us this example of how to do it, and it feels great. I was doing it while you were uh, explaining it. And it almost feels like not only is you're breathing, the air is coming in, it's relaxing you. It almost seems like things are slowing down. Is that one of the ways, or how do we navigate through what is a fast-paced society? Is it, what do we do to deal with that, us and the children? Because keep in mind that you write children's books.
Yes, and many of my children's books have breathing games and exercises in there for the parents and for the children. And yes, by focusing on breathing and just taking a few minutes to do that, it does slow the mind down. And it brings us into a state where we can see, it's almost like being in the eye of the hurricane. So we come into a center that's calm, and we can see how to navigate that outer chaos much easier.
Mhm.
Yeah, that quietness, that focus. So whenever we find ourselves getting upset, whenever we find ourselves hurrying or worrying, if we can just remember to even bring our hands to our hearts, connect in with our hearts, and just take a few deep breaths and breathe. And it only takes even less than a minute once you've practiced that to bring yourself back to center.
when is the best time? You mentioned that you mentioned that in your books you have material breathing techniques for the children and the parents. When is the best time for us as parents to grab our children and start working with them regarding reading, to sit down and start a, I guess what you could call a reading program for your children?
Yeah, if your child has not been born yet, the best time is when fifth month in the womb, because that's
Wow.
when the child starts to relate to the outer world and starts to, because everything's vibration. So the child tunes into the vibrations around it really strong, starting about the fifth month, and
Hmm.
especially to mom's voice. And it's the saints of saints for ages have known that mothers have the power to literally start constructing their child's life starting about the fifth month in the womb by playing whatever music they want to play, by reading them. If they want their child to be a scientist, start reading scientific things. um,
Hmm.
if they want them to be a rock musician, start playing rock music. You want to be a pianist, start having listening to piano. But it
Hmm.
starts that early, and there's a lot of psychological information and psychologists that have worked with children that have proven all of that, and that just continues right on after a child's born. You don't have to think they understand it. For instance, all of my stories, I craft every word, every sentence, every paragraph with the knowledge that each of those words carries a vibration. And I want the highest vibrations possible going into whoever's listening to those stories. So we can have an
Wow.
effect very early, and we just keep it going.
Okay, Timothy. Now I have a question. Being you said that, I've worked as an educator. I work with children with disabilities in behavioral settings for 20 years, and I work with various grade level of children. And Timothy, I'm wondering that there were some students that it seems like I remember one young man, I believe he was in the first grade years ago. There was a book entitled "Are You My Mother?" He kept reading that same book over and over and over again. Every time we would say, go get a book, he would go back to the shelf with all of the books and he would get that same book. Why do some children read that same book over and over again instead of reading something, I guess, what you can call fresh?
Because each time they reread or re-listen to a story, it's in training and developing neural networks and establishing things in those networks that do not happen with just one reading. So my daughter, it's like I love to read to my daughter, but she happened to want the stories I disliked the most read to her the most. And I knew nothing about why children wanted to hear the same story over and over again. I just honored her wish because I loved her and I felt
Okay.
she knew something more than I knew. And later I learned why, and that it's actually developing neural networks and establishing connections within them that do not happen with just one reading.
Well, Timothy, certainly we have enjoyed this time together. Can you tell us a little bit about how we can get in touch with you, how we can reach out to you and get our hands on some of your material?
My website is www.timothystuetz.com. And if you go in the menu in the freebies section, I have very powerful guided meditations for everybody in the family. There's fairy tales there that are for free, songs that are free, some Qigong exercises that are free. And that's the best way to reach me and to start experiencing some of the tools that I use to keep myself in a state of absolute peace, bliss, and love all of the time.
Well, Timothy, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and spending time with us here on the Underground Subway. It was a tremendously powerful and enjoyable interview, and hopefully we can do it again real soon, my friend.
Oh, David, it's been so wonderful to be with you. Thank you so very, very much.
Well, we're out of time here on the Underground Subway, and we certainly want to thank our newly found and wonderful friend Timothy Stuetz for being with us. I'm telling you, this was an amazing interview. I am inspired and I feel motivated, and yet I feel educated. I feel as though Timothy has really enlightened us, and we're just excited about the Aloha stage in our lives, and we're excited about all of the information that he has shared with us. I hear the music playing in the background, which means that we are about to end this edition of the Underground Subway. I enjoy being with you, and I not only want to thank Timothy for joining us, I want to thank you for joining us, my friends. Each time that you listen in, it means a lot. It means a lot that you yourself want to become a better individual, and that's what our role is here, to provide you with all of the information and the knowledge that you need in order to live a better and more successful life. We're about to pull into Destiny Boulevard and Purpose Avenue, and this edition is going to come to an end real soon, but we'll have another edition for you real soon. Listen, my friends, I enjoy what we do. We do it together. Sometimes I almost feel like Mr. Rogers. I feel like I'm glad to welcome you into the Underground Subway neighborhood, and it's sad to see you go, but there'll be another one coming along real soon. Listen, before you go to bed tonight, you know the challenge, you know the routine. Look yourself in the eyes in a mirror. Find a mirror and ask yourself a question. Today, did I do something to work toward my destiny? Did I do something to work toward my purpose in life? Did I do something to make the world a better place? Did I do something to make my family better? Did I do something to make this world a brighter world? Or did I simply waste another day? Think about that. We have no more time to waste. I'll see you next time. I'm David Alston, host of the Underground Subway, and we'll see you the next time this train pulls out on the Underground Subway. Have a great today and an even better tomorrow.